We begin in the name of the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. In this module of what is Deen, I am now going to make a few presentations on the sources of knowledge of this Deen, of God's religion, Islam. Today I am going to talk about the Quran. The Quran is the most significant source of knowledge for all religious purposes for Muslims. The Quran declares itself as Al-Furqan, the criterion. It's mentioned in the very first verse of chapter 25 that God is the one who revealed this Al-Furqan so that the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, should become a person who is warning the entire mankind. لِيَكُونَ لِلْعَالَمِينَ نَذِيرًا. This Al-Furqan is the criterion. It means the source which distinguishes right from wrong. Another verse clarifies still further what it means. In chapter 2, verse 213, the Almighty mentions that He gave books to the prophets, and the idea was لِيَحْكُمَ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ, that those books should decide amongst men فِي مَخْتَلَفُوا فِي, in the matters that they disagreed in. That is, whenever there is a difference of opinion, it is this criterion, the Book of God, that will decide as to which point of view is the right point of view. The Quran is a book that distinguishes right from wrong. Therefore, it has to be a clear book. It has to give its verdicts in a manner that there is no confusion about them. If somebody is prepared to understand the book is not complex, confusing, difficult. And that's exactly what the Quran claims about itself. It mentions in, for example, chapter 44, verses 1 and 2, it says, Hamim wal Kitabil Mubin. This is Surah Hamim, and the clear book is a proof of the fact that it's from God. So, the book is clear. It had to be clear, or else it won't have been a criterion. A book that is not clearly understandable cannot claim to be a book that is giving verdicts, clear verdicts to decide what is right from what is wrong. A third important aspect of the Quran is that it is also, according to the Quran, muhaimin, muhaiminan alayh. It's supervising, guarding the earlier books. It is their guardian. The early books, that is, the Old Testament, the New Testament, Torah, Zabur, Injil, Torah, Psalms, and Gospels, they're all books of God, confirmed by the Quran. However, because God in His scheme of things had prophets coming later after the revelation of these books, He did not decide to ensure that these books too would remain fully preserved, as we have seen earlier was the case with the Quran. And the reason was that God knew that the later prophets would clarify that certain passages of God's books were altered, tampered with, and what we are telling you is the right understanding, is the right version. The Quran was fully preserved because, as we've already discussed, no new prophet is now going to come. However, the earlier books have many things to say, and the Quran has come after them. Now, the Quran has been given the status of being in charge of the earlier books as well, of guarding them, of clarifying as to what part of the book is acceptable and what part is not. So, if we look at the earlier books, we can divide their contents into three parts. There is one part which the Quran confirms is correct. So the Quran tells us that the Quran and the last prophet, may God's mercy be on him, they came after there were prophecies of their arrival clearly mentioned in the earlier books. The Quran also mentions that there was a dispute that arose between the Jews and the Muslims in Medina, whereby the Jews were claiming that the Muslims are declaring some edibles as lawful even though they were unlawful in the eyes of God. The Quran says in chapter 3 verse 93, قُلْ فَأْتُوا بِالتَّوْرَاتِ, tell them, bring forth Torah, fatluha, then read it if you are really truthful. So that the Quran confirms that what is mentioned in Torah is God Almighty's verdict. However, the Quran also criticizes and declares as incorrect some passages of the earlier books. For instance, in chapter 50 of the Quran, verse 38, the Almighty mentions that God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days. And then goes on to say, وَمَا مَسَّنَا مِن لُغُوبٍ, but we were not tired. Fatigue did not overtake us, which is clear mention of a negation of what's mentioned in the Old Testament, the book of Genesis, that the Almighty created heavens and the earth in 6 days, and on the seventh day He took rest. Likewise, we know that the Quran very clearly mentions time and again that Jesus Christ was the son of Mary. In fact, in most cases, wherever Jesus is mentioned by this clarification that He is Isa ibn Maryam, He is Jesus, the son of Mary, clearly rejecting the understanding that Jesus was the Son of God. So, these are the two types of verses. Some of the passages in the earlier books are confirmed, some of them are rejected, and there is a vast body of information in the earlier books which is available for Muslims to read and to benefit from and to decide in the light of the Quran as to which part of them is acceptable and which is not. Because the Quran now, for all times to come until the day of judgment, is now the ultimate text of God, and it's a guardian over the earlier texts. The Quran has a certain sequence which is very different from the sequence in which it was revealed. So, the historical chronological sequence of the Quran was not taken as the final sequence when the Quran was ultimately presented to the Muslim Ummah, the Muslim nation, after it was completely revealed. We know from a very early passage of the Quran, chapter 75, verses 16 to 19, that the Almighty promised the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, that the Quran is going to be fully preserved and that the way it's going to be presented and is going to be read out will be clearly mentioned by the Almighty. So, the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, need not worry about it. So goes the passage. It says, La tuharrik bihi lisanaka. Don't move your tongue swiftly, O Prophet, litajala bi, so that you get it quickly. The Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, was very eager to get the Quran quickly, more and more of it. The Almighty asked him not to do so. Inna alayna jam'ahu wa Qur'ana. It is upon us to gather it and to read it out. فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ. So that when we read it out, فَاتَّبِعْ قُرْآنَ, then you follow that reading. ثُمَّ إِنَّ عَلَيْنَا بَيَانًا. Then it's going to be upon us to clarify it as well. Going by his promise, which he made in this passage in chapter 75, verses 16 to 19, the Almighty arranged for the angel Jibreel to come to the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, on the nights of Ramadan, or the sacred month of Ramadan, and recite before the Prophet the Quran that had been revealed until that time. And the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, repeated what he said. In the very last Ramadan of the life of the Prophet, when the Quran was completed, all its verses had already been revealed, the angel came and he recited the Quran before the Prophet, and he recited it back, and this happened twice. This is known as Ardai Akhira, recitation and presentation, which was the very last one. It is said that there were some companions too who were present at the time when it was happening. Now, the Quran that we have today is the Quran that was recited by the angel Jibreel to the Prophet, and the Prophet presented the same Quran to the Ummah, to his companions. This Quran is very different in its sequence to the Quran that was revealed in its historical, chronological order. Obviously, the question arises as to why was this new sequencing, new marshalling of the text done. When we look at the Quran carefully, we find that this new presentation of the Quran, which is the only presentation of the Quran, by the way, all Muslims agree to the fact that the Quran that we have today, in its peculiar sequence, is the only Quran that the Muslims have been given by God Almighty, by His Messenger. Now, this substantially different order of the Quran obviously raises a very important question as to why the historical sequence of the Quran was ignored and a completely new sequence was given to the Quran. When this question is explored and the Quranic text is read with deep understanding, we find three important reasons, three different aspects of the Almighty's wisdom that one can find in the present sequence of the Quran. One, the Quran, all its 114 surahs, chapters, have a central theme, such that all verses of the surah are directly or indirectly serving that theme. Second, the 114 surahs, chapters of the Quran, apart from 6, the rest of the 108 surahs have been arranged in a manner that they are in pairs. In other words, the Quran is in 54 surah pairs, such that each pair has 2 surahs belonging to the same period of revelation, and one surah is emphasizing one aspect of the common theme of the 2 surahs more than the other surah. The other surah is complementing the first surah by emphasizing, talking about another aspect of that common theme. So, when a reader reads the Quran, he is keen and interested in understanding it more and more, even if he or she recites the Quran over and over again. Because the reader can see that all surahs have their own respective central themes, and all verses have to serve that theme. They can see that two adjacent surahs, they are in pairs. And last but not the least, the entire Quran is divided into 7 surah groups, such that each surah group begins with one or more Meccan surahs. Meccan surahs are the ones that were revealed in the first 13 years of the prophetic mission. And the second part of the surah group has one or more Madinan surahs. Madinan surahs are the ones that were revealed after the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, migrated to Medina. So, the Quran that we have today is presented in a way that it has 7 surah groups. Each group has its own peculiar central theme. All surahs are serving that theme, and it's first Meccan surahs followed by Madinan surahs. That's what the present Quran is. That's what the Quran that the Almighty gave this Ummah looks like. It's a presentation that challenges the reader to use his or her intellect and understand the meanings of the text, ponder and reflect over its verses, and find out more and more of the Almighty's guidance. The chronological order of the Quran is not relevant anymore, except for some academic purposes. For all practical purposes, this Quran is the only text in its existing peculiar sequence that is relevant for Muslims. The important thing is that when a believer reads the Quran, or even if a non-Muslim reads the Quran, he or she is able to understand more and more as to why the Almighty has arranged it differently from what it was, the arrangement was to begin with. To begin with, when it was being revealed to the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, there was an important mission that he had to accomplish to make sure that God's message prevails over all other messages of the Arabian Peninsula, the people whom he addressed directly. After that mission was accomplished, Quran was rearranged to suit the needs of the believers, the Ummah, those people who had now accepted Islam as their religion. So their needs were different, and therefore we begin with a group which was revealed by and large in Medina, because it carries instructions which were given to those who were believers. And then the group is followed by other groups which are talking about the various different aspects of the prophetic mission. And while mentioning those aspects, there is guidance, there are laws, there are principles also mentioned in the verses and the surahs of all these groups.